Brandon Beachy, thank you for being here. It's one of these things where I get excited to talk to athletes who have made that great transition from their sport to what they're doing now. But let's take a big step back first, and I'd love to hear a little bit about at what point did you sort of realize, you know what, I might be able to become a professional baseball player. This may actually be happening. Was it before high school? Was it in high school? Tell me a little bit about that.
No. I was a position player. I was a hitter, and I went to an NAIA school because they gave me a scholarship, and it helped me afford to go to college. And then started pitching a little bit in college, and I didn't think I could be professional until a scout walked up to me as I was fixing home plate after a summer league game after my junior year, and said he wanted to sign me. After seeing me throw one inning. That was the first time that ever crossed my mind that was a possibility. And then it was still, a couple of years later before getting called up that it even became a possibility in my mind to make it up to the majors.
And it's funny because some people, they sort of feel even at the age of 10 or 12 or 14, they're like, oh, I'm definitely making it. And there are others like you that say, you love the sport, you love the game, but you sort of say, well, there's no way. And then the one day it happens. So tell me a little bit about that phone call or that experience of you've made it. How'd you find out?
Getting called up to the big leagues.
Yeah.
Like most things in my life, it wasn't typical, and it just kind of, worked out better that way for me. But no, I led the entire minor leagues in ERA in 2010 between Double and Triple A, and the Braves were cheap and didn't call me up, but told me to stay hot. So I went home for a week and then went down to Instructs in Florida. And while I was there, I got the call from our coordinator, come over to his hotel room. He told me, hey, you're going to Philly tomorrow. And you might be starting the day after that, but we don't know. What I didn't know at the time is, a good friend of mine, Jair Jurgens.
Yeah.
I can say this because I love him, but he was being an idiot and challenged one of our infielders to a foot race and tweaked his knee in the outfield. Doing that, and then they test, and then I get there and I go have dinner with a teammate that night and said, hey, JJ said his knee felt fine today, so you're probably not starting tomorrow. So I told my family not even to come, and like, hey, I'm just heading back to Orlando tomorrow. And sure enough, they tested his knee, and Bobby Cox handed me the ball. So it kind of happened like that. And like I said, it worked out to where I never even had a chance to get nervous because it all happened so quickly.
Nice. And do you so some people say their first at bat, their first whatever it is, it's sort of a fog, or it just kind of feels like it just happened quickly. Your first pitch and your first experience in front of big league crowd. What was that like, or do you remember it, or was it kind of fuzzy?
It was. I remember it, but it was just another game at that point. From the second they handed me the ball, it was, I was being grabbed by Brian McCann and David Ross and put in front of a computer to start going over hitters. So there was no downtime for me to think about it. Mm-hmm. I remember I didn't have that moment until I had been, out of the game for a couple innings, and I'm standing there in the dugout watching, and some kid in a red bodysuit, jumps the fence, is running on our field, and our left fielder trips him. And at that was the moment where I'm just kind of looking around the stadium and taking it all in. It was like, wow, I'm really here, and I was really out there playing. So it wasn't even on the mound that I felt that.
Not a lot of fans jumping around the field in minors, right?
No, not that I remember. I'm not sure that anybody would chase them if they did.
That's right, exactly. That's funny. Wow, that's pretty cool. So it took a couple of games and so forth, but you tell me a little bit about you got your first win, because look, a lot of on the hitting side, first major league hit, first major league home run. on the pitching side, it might be first strikeout, first save, first win. But was it one of these feelings of like, wow, I've finally I've made it. Like I've spent all of this, hours and hours and hours and hours, training and fitness and all this stuff to get to this point. Was it a sort of a sense of relief, or was it, as you were saying, just another game, you're gonna keep on going?
No, no, it didn't really happen like that for me,
Mhm.
where, I went into a battle for a starting, rotation spot that next spring. And it was, hey, I'm the undrafted guy. We've got first rounders and other guys that I'm competing against, and there's no reason for them to put me on this roster. So it was, when I made the team, and it was, the focus just shifted to, I can't, feel like I'm here. I got to stay here. I got to do
Yeah,
whatever it
yeah,
takes to stay.
yeah.
It wasn't really till a couple years later, I mean, I'll never forget it. I was at that point leading baseball in ERA, and I'm doing an interview with the MLB network, and they're asking me if I think I deserve to start the All-Star game. I was like, what? Like, no, I don't. And then I blew out, about 4 days later, and then it was over. So from I had about a week, I think, of feeling like I belonged in my career.
Well, we got to change that. So look, um, most people don't get that week, as you know, but that's, you went through a big chunk of the next few years rehabbing and trying to get back in the game and back on the top of your game and so forth. But give me a sense of, at what point during that time frame did you start thinking, I better start thinking about what's going to happen on the other side of this? Or were you completely focused on baseball, baseball, baseball until they basically grabbed it from you?
I was completely focused. At that time, it wasn't even a thought like, hey, have this surgery. I'm with a professional baseball organization that what they're going to put me through has got to be the best in the world. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. Things have
Yeah,
changed a lot in 10
yeah.
years. But no, it was just never a doubt. Like, hey, 12 months later, I'll be right back. Like, never missed a beat. Um, and 12 months later, I was back and started grooving, and had about a month before it started hurting me again, and ultimately led to a second Tommy John. Another 6 or 8 months later.
And I mean, because look, that's obviously a killer, a killer, what do you call it, recovery time and so forth. Tell me a little bit about, how that process goes, because they say, look, don't pick up a ball for a while, don't throw for a while, don't do this for a while, etc. What keeps you sharp? Or do you go through a period of, you know, struggle mentally and that sort of thing?
Big struggles mentally. I mean, it's definitely a mental, rehab. It's like you're saying, you can only pick up the ball. It's regimented. Hey, you got 20 throws today from 30 feet, or whatever it is, all the way back out for 12 to 16 months. It's regimented that way. So trying to stay sharp mentally, just watching the game, learning, picking up things from your teammates as they're going. That's try to do that, but you just can't. And what I found later in my career trying to make comebacks is there's no substitute for being on the mound in those competitive situations. There's no
Right.
way to keep your tools sharp without actually without doing it. There's no knife sharpener for that skill, because it's a sport where the difference between a minor league guy and a big league guy is so slim anyway, that that last couple percent of consistency is really all that was the difference in the first place.
Well, I think that's, to me, one of the things that I think Major League Baseball maybe lacks a little bit is the ability, and maybe it's getting better, but the ability to reach out to some of the guys that get these long-term injuries and offer them some of the mental help that they need, and not necessarily in a bad way, but just more so just how to keep them best focused. Because when you're told you can, as you said, only, you can throw 20 throws from 30 feet, your body is saying, dude, I can do 200 throws from 30 feet. What do you mean just 20? And I'm sure you were on the 21st, like, come on, just let me throw this one. And they're like, that's it. And the competitive juices are so, you want to do so much more. I'm sure that's the tough part of it. I'm certain is that the struggle of trying to, like, you want to do more, don't you? Or
Yeah, for sure. You want to do more. You want to work. I was a worker. I
yeah,
wanted to. I had my coach take the ball from me in bullpens multiple times. I wanted to work hard to get better. But really, and that part is definitely difficult. But the fear, especially that second time around, it starts creeping in. It's like, hey, you blew out again.
yeah,
What's to say it's not going to happen a third time, or what makes you think it's going to work? And it's, you go from your whole life not necessarily feeling anything in your body to now I'm so hyper aware, I'm feeling every little thing, and it's causing little freakouts, every tiny little thing. And it just becomes a mental battle of, can I do this? Is this going to work out? How am I going to take care of my family? I'm on the trajectory to have, this kind of life, and now that's gone. What is,
yeah,
is my, was my wife with me for me, or for, the, what our life would have looked like, type of thing. All those doubts that are,
yeah.
pretty ridiculous are pretty loud and real in your head in that moment. At least they were for me. I guess I can't speak for other people. Um,
I'm gonna
Hopefully,
guess that that's pretty standard stuff.
but
And I think that and that goes for any profession that you're suddenly forced to stop doing it, and all those doubts creep in. So let's jump forward a little bit to the first day you found out about this whole notion of franchising. Like, how did any of this stuff come to you? And was it something you reached out to someone? Did they come to you? How did this all get started?
no. So fast forward. I made it back for a few starts, and got sent down, and then started figuring out again, but ultimately got hurt again. Different injury, same elbow type of thing. And then I should have hung him up in 2016, but doing a little rehab, they did some tests, and it turned out I had thoracic outlet syndrome, kind of a unique case, and where it didn't present in my shoulder, it was in my forearm, so they never even thought to test for it. But the specialist told me, he's like, hey, you've got, you know, I can't remember the terms, but the blood flow was restricted and the nerve was restricted, which is extremely rare to have both. And
Yeah.
he's like, look, it's like you've thrown 100 pitches every day already when you get out of bed, and it
Uh,
makes sense that your soft tissue keeps giving out. So I got a logical explanation, and that was all I needed to keep trying, I guess. So I spent the next, there was a complication with that surgery, but it cost me a whole year. So I spent the next 3 years, trying to make comeback attempts. And what I realized later was purely out of fear of what to do next. I
mhm.
had no idea. I looked at, started to, in my mind, put a resume together, and it's blank. It's a blank sheet of paper.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, I knew I didn't. At that point, going through that, you're kind of bitter. Definitely bitter. Where I didn't want to be around base. I knew I didn't want to be around baseball every day if I wasn't going to be playing anymore.
Right.
So I kind of mentally crossed that off the list of what to do, but otherwise had no idea. And I got lucky. I had one of my best friends there in Atlanta. He was a medical device guy, just covered too much territory, and it blew me away because he was successful, and just he told me one day, hey, I'm quitting. I was like, well, what are you going to do next? He's like, I don't know. I was like, man, that's you don't hear that happen too often. So he spent a whole year just networking, and trying to figure out, hey, who has the life? What kind of life do I want for myself and my family, and who has that? And then what do they do? But along that process, he talked to a franchise guy, and so when I was going through this, he said, "Hey, why don't you talk to this franchise guy?" He ended up going a different route, but he connected to me this guy, and I knew a couple things, and you've probably heard me say this before. I knew a couple things on that first conversation. I knew, like, hey, franchising is for me. Like, I do have things to put on a resume. I have a lot of things that are going to be very valuable in business and in life. I have, that self starter, self motivation. I have a hard work ethic. I have resiliency. I know how to fail. I know how to get back up. And what I don't know is systems and an industry, which is exactly what a franchise provides. So I provide the skills, the leadership too. That's something I think is downplayed, or not talked, maybe not downplayed, but not highlighted enough.
Okay. Yeah.
Is that there's a real skill in being able to coexist with 25 other personalities on a daily basis, and pull together in the direction of everybody getting better and getting the best out of each other, because you got to talk to different guys different ways, and those are skills that's what management is, right? And coexisting in that space for so long is just, whether you know it or not, it has given you that set of skills. So I knew that I could apply those things and to a system with a track record and support, and I would figure it out. I could bet on myself in that sense and figure it out. And then the second thing I knew talking to him was that, why didn't the MLB connect me to this guy or someone like him and teach me about this?
Yeah.
And so I knew, like, hey, I'm going to be that guy. I want to be that resource for other guys that were at the bottom of a bunch of bottles and worried about what's next, where I can at least educate guys and help them cross something off the list when they're at the point where I was, where it's like, man, I want to cross something off the list of what to do next, just to narrow it down, because I just feel so lost right now. So that's I guess how I got connected to it in the first place.
And so we spoke a little bit. Um, I did that poll question earlier where you asked, and we said, how much money does it take to get into doing a franchise? Because now you're doing some franchise consulting, and people are probably curious, like, what on earth does that mean? What does it take? But in a second, I'm going to have another poll question thrown in there. But before I have that thrown in, just real quickly, tell me about the franchise that you got involved with and how on earth you landed with that one.
Yeah, so that kind of speaks to the process of what I do now. And I guess I'll say was, I knew if I wanted to accomplish those two things, to do the second one, to help other guys, I had to be a proof of concept. So I got into my business, and I guess I'll backtrack again. But no, going through that process, it's more about figuring out who I am and what I want, and taking the characteristics of the things I want in my daily life. Like, hey, I want to put in this many hours. I want to work with this type of employee. I want this kind of potential for scalability, or this type of industry, or all those different general characteristics, and coming up with a model. And then the guy I worked with, colleague of mine now, he brought me ideas that fit that model, that gave me the potential to achieve what I wanted, with those businesses as the vehicle. And part of that process is wiping your slate clean, putting preconceived notions aside, and just looking at the characteristics. Because I ended up, the business I own is called Koala Insulation. That's home insulation, fiberglass and spray foam in your attic. And I didn't know the first thing about building science or anything like that. but this business provided all the, the peripheral core things that I wanted to achieve, the freedom of my time and finances that I desired.
But
So
was there, because look, as we'll talk about in a few minutes, there are a lot of, there's such a huge variety of opportunities in franchising. Was there, I know this one you're saying checked a lot of your boxes, but no one sort of wakes up and says, you know what, home insulation. No, they say Popeyes or Pep Auto, whatever
yeah.
it is. So what was it specifically about this one that really caught your eyes?
Um, I don't know. I don't know specifically. I looked at it. It's again, it's more about the general characteristics of it on the front end, and then working through the investigation with that franchise and the validation from the existing franchisees,
Okay, got it.
and kind of doing the research that way. That's the most important part is that investigation. So the general characteristics got me into that investigation, and then as I learn more and I'm able to project and kind of plan what I want things to look like, and then validate with the franchisees to see if that's possible. Um, that's how I ended up doing that.
Got
So
it. It's all good. So, so with that said, taking a step sort of back and forward and so forth, you've done very, very well with this franchise, and now you're saying, well, look, now that it's running itself, you've got a team that runs it and so forth. Now you're doing the consulting for franchising, and for this company, Franchoice. But tell me, what was it that you said, okay, I'm doing well here. Now it's time for me to share my success with others.
yeah,
What prompted that?
that was the goal the whole time. Like I said, I knew that from the start. That's what I wanted to do, but I knew I needed to do well first. Like no one was going to want to, talk to me or give me time if I was struggling. No, but so it took me about a year. Like I said, I didn't know anything about it. I dove in. I
Mhm.
worked hard to learn it, become an expert at it, and build a team and put systems in place with that team, to give them the runway they needed, to work. And it took me about a year, and I separated myself from the day to day, where I was working with my two managers every day, where I'm talking to that, texting and talking to them on a phone, a little bit each day, and then doing some of the bookkeeping behind the scenes. But then I was at a point then where I could go through training with Franchoice,
Yeah,
the group you mentioned there.
yeah,
Went through about a month-long training, um, and then kind of came out on the other side of that about a year and a half ago, and hit the ground running, and have been trying to slowly kind of get the word out and get in front of people that might be interested.
I think that most people out there, the vast amount of the public thinks, all right, food. They're thinking McDonald's, Wendy's, or any of these other ones, which those, from what I understand, are pretty damn expensive, right?
Yeah, and that was my experience
Yeah,
too, and that's why I wanted to do this, to help others, because I think you're right. I think the vast majority of us only think of food.
yeah,
They only think of you know Papa John's or Popeyes or whatever it
yeah,
is. And kind of going back to that other poll earlier, kind of ingest. I put in there
yeah,
something. Well, you got to be Shaq to get into it, because that's
yes,
what I thought. I thought, to make any money, you got to be Shaquille O'Neal and be able to buy 40 Papa Johns. It's going to be tight margins and huge initial investments, and that's true of fast food. But there's so much more than that. And honestly, I don't do fast food. Fast food doesn't need someone like me to bring them people, because they're turning away people left and right. They're running out of real estate. And
right, right.
honestly, they're not great businesses if you're getting into one of them. you're getting into 40 of them, yeah, great. But yeah, most of what I work with is non food. We have some food things, but they're not, it's not McDonald's. But yeah, all of the above is the answer to this, and it was really eye opening to me. And if there's a business out there that's doing well, they're franchising it, and
Yeah.
everyone else, and they're taking it nationwide, and they're having a lot of success.
So I'm looking to create win again franchises in all the major cities. The cost to open one is maybe $20, I think. So can you be my broker for that, or?
I'm in. I'll be a
Sure.
franchisee too.
Awesome. Anyway, now, but let's talk about that for a second. I don't want to get into like specific, like what would you exactly recommend today and that sort of thing. But give us, I guess, give us all a sense of, because there is a question about how much needs to be put in and so forth. And I think we had a variety of options, a million down to whatever it was. But tell me, give me a sense of, if I said, well, gee, I have X amount of, let's say, liquidity of cash that I can realistically put into fill in the blank franchise, what tends to be sort of the easiest point of entry at this point?
Yeah, yeah, and I mean on that, it's anything. The answer to that one was all of the above as well.
Okay.
There's businesses out there, and just a little bit getting into it. It's if you have to build out a physical location, that's going to be more
Yeah.
expensive than if you're doing some type of service business that requires just a vehicle,
Mhm.
or sales forward businesses, or other things like that. But yeah, I guess the benchmark, the doors can be open to me if you have 50,000 in liquid. So that doesn't mean cash in your checking account. That's just, stocks, any kind of investment that could be, readily made liquid. If you've got 50,000 there, there's plenty in the inventory to you wouldn't be wasting time to look at, I guess.
Now, and some people, they'd be doing it to develop long-term wealth. Others want to do a fairly short-term hit, I guess. Um, what is your Is there such a thing? I mean, how often do those happen, the short-term bounces versus?
No, quite a bit. No,
Mhm.
there's several strategies. Part of the advantage of being in a getting into a business for yourself. There's a lot of tax benefits, obviously, but then you can you grow it and you can sell them. They're bought and sold all the time. You get some cash flow, get a nice multiplier. Take your exit and reinvest it in another business or another. I know several people that they build wealth by playing that game, right? Where they take a small initial investment in one business, they grow it for a few years, and I've talked to some. I was talking to a guy last week at the conference, and he's doing that. He's done it for 30 years now, where he has a 5 to 7 year window on all of them. Grow it, get it mature, sell it, grow it, get into something else, grow it. And each time the investment gets a little bigger, a little more profitable, kind of set up, a little more desirable in the resale. And he's avoiding taxes each time by doing that, by reinvesting in a business, and playing that game, a game that I'm still learning about. That it was a world that was completely foreign to me at the time. How these people are using businesses to build wealth, businesses that they're not in, and I should say that too, getting into a painting business. A lot of these businesses are set up so that you're not touching a brush ever as the owner either.
Oh, I
I'm
see.
Yeah,
Got it.
yeah. No, and there's different models. Like obviously you could be an owner operator, you could be in the field, but I was never, I filled in here and there, but I got into this business and was never in attics on a regular basis. I guess that's typically who they're looking for is somebody that wants to grow teams,
Yep.
um,
Yep.
and
Hmm.
expand and scale, and they're not. because it's a two-way street, you know, the service I provide, because these franchises, they don't want, you know, to get a dud
Of course.
into a
Oh,
territory, because these
yeah.
territories are, you know, the markets are valuable to them. So if they see a market and they get a feeling that, hey, you want to take that truck and go do the work all yourself. Um, no, they want somebody that's going to scale it and be successful, because that's better for them. That's better for the whole system.
So when you started the Koala um, franchise, how much would you say time were you spending on it in the first, let's say, 6 months or a year on an hour, weekly basis?
Yeah, and I was working it full time. It's all I had going on at the time. But I
Hmm.
was, again, I was answering phones, doing scheduling, you know, doing marketing, doing, you know, research, learning the business, talking to other business owners to learn my market and understand, you know, pricing and sales and, you know, philosophies and all that. But so I was putting in, you know, 40, 50 hours a week, early on. And then, you know, as we grew, I was able to hire more people. Um, and, you know, it was probably 6, 7 months, and I hired somebody to answer the phones full time, and that freed up my time quite a bit. And then another few months, we hired another salesperson and added another truck and hired a full time ops manager. You know, it goes on and on. It just kind of, you know, you put the right systems and
So they
philosophies in
so
place.
so
And it flows.
Koala walks you through that, though, I'm assuming, right? They help you with
Oh, for
that
sure. Yeah.
procedure, right?
Yeah. And it's, you know, some franchises that this is all, you know, why the investigation is so important, because some of them are more rigid with their systems. Like, hey, this is what you do to be successful. Don't deviate from this small path at
Hmm.
all. And others, you know, like the industry I'm in, I could build 6 different businesses out of, you know, insulation. I could go after, you know, different types of work and build
Yeah.
different things that would, it would all require different structures and stuff. So I had a little more freedom, which took more time to figure out what I wanted to do as I was learning that.
Got it. So right now, what's the, give me a couple of points of like advice that you would give anybody thinking about, like, now the seed's been planted and they're like, wow, I didn't know this was a thing. And you know what, maybe it's, again, retired athletes who have some time on their hands right now and maybe have some of that cash available. What are a couple bits of advice you would give someone who may be considering going in?
Um, hmm. You know, get educated, talk to somebody like me, you know. That's the whole point of me doing this,
Mhm.
was to help that person you're describing, because, you know, first of all, it doesn't cost you anything. My services are completely free. Like I said, it's more of a, you know, my business is paying all the bills. And you know, and I can't speak highly enough of what franchising has done for me and my family. Um, Not to mention, you know, my managers and how I've changed the trajectory of their lives. But my wife got sick about a year ago. We didn't know what it was. It took a long time. And, you know, thankfully I was working from home, working a couple hours a day, and it was pretty easy, pretty seamless for me to take care of our kids and her, basically for the last, you know, for 9 to 10 months, where she was in bed for a couple weeks at a time. Where, you know, I thankfully I didn't have a W-2 job, and you know,
Mm,
we were able to get by
mhm.
just fine, because I had that freedom of my time. You know, it took away a little of what I'm doing now, but that was nothing. That's not a big deal to me. But to say that, like, I guess what you do is investigate, and to investigate, you got to have some direction. And, you know, I would have been totally lost and wouldn't have known where to start. So somebody like me that, you know, these companies present to me all the time. That's a big part of my job, is just seeing behind the curtain at what they're doing, so that I know when I meet somebody and I get to who they are and what they want, I know how to match that model with a business that provides the opportunity there that that you're looking for. And then the coaching through
Yeah.
that investigation, being able to offer some resources and some ideas on how to, hey, this is a big thing. There's definitely some fear and anxiety, that goes along with making any kind of purchase. So having somebody there to kind of help you, is invaluable, and it's fun for me. Like I said, it's more fun than fiberglass insulation. I can tell you that much.
What? Well, but that brings up a good point, though. I feel that people who get involved in owning a franchise, I'm sure some of them are really sort of concerned about what they're, if they go to someone and say, well, I do, roach killing or what, whatever it is, that kind of stuff, versus I own a swanky, like a Coach store or whatever the hell it is. So, I mean, is it something where, do you run across people that are concerned about that? And even though it may be more profitable?
Yeah, and that's totally valid. Some people
Mhm.
care more about the status than
Yeah.
others, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I get to that in our conversations. It's a sample question I would ask is like, hey, you know, if if business A can check every box, your day to day, the finances, what it provides, but it's a porta potty business. Is that
Yeah.
okay with you? Is that okay
Right.
with your wife? Are you going to be okay telling people that at a holiday party? Like, and if
Yeah.
not, that's okay. There's plenty of sexy businesses out there, for people and that's totally valid. Like if you're, I just keep using Shaq as an example. Maybe not Shaq level, but if if you're doing something like this as more of a diversification or something like that, where you're not going to be, because there's plenty of businesses where you come in from the start in a semi-absentee model where your role is to never be running things on a day-to-day, and that those are going to, can be as sexy as you want them to be, whatever your tastes are, and have something where, hey, it gives me something where I can pop in. I can go into the shop or the store for a day and hang out and be seen. Or, I do have this new hottest thing in town, and I like talking about it. Those are all very valid things. There's no right or wrong answer, but rest assured, there's people are out there making money in any type of model that you can dream of.
That's good to hear. So, all right. Well, look, we will definitely be talking about. I'm jumping in. I'm count me in for the porta potties. I'm all over that. I don't really care what people think. So, that's awesome. But look, so I truly appreciate your time. I think this is an area that I'm certainly happy to make some introductions to you about this. I think the biggest thing is the education, right? Once people are educated on this, then rock and roll. Sounds like.
Yeah, agreed. And I said it, and I'll say it again. In that time of need for myself, I would have done anything to cross something off the list. And if that's, the process for me is, a few phone calls, a couple hours, 2, 3 hours. I love talking to people, and especially people, we have shared experiences through sports and whatnot.
Cool. All right, last question. And maybe it's an easy one, maybe not. Um, give me three batters that you would love to face today, that you'd love to challenge and see if you could strike out. Who would they
Mm.
be?
Oh, well, I got to go, my former teammate, Freddie Freeman. I'd love to, be humbled by him. And, I think you got to face Otani, right? The guy's gonna go down as one of the greatest athletes of all time. So you gotta put that, good or bad. I'd love to be a sacrificial lamb and be one of his home runs. Um,
Okay,
yeah, yeah. Judge and Acuna are good ones too. But yeah, I don't even know who the third one would be, but yeah, probably Judge.
cool. Got it. Well, listen, I truly appreciate your time today. We're going to jump back to the tables and have some more chatting. But Thanks again for sharing your time with us today. And, it really is fascinating to hear how almost anybody can get involved with what you're doing now. And it sounds like you've got an incredibly bright future ahead of you. And even though, you had some challenges coming out of baseball and leaving the sport, I think it sounds like you've really leveraged a lot of that athletic mindset and that skill set towards becoming successful in business. And I congratulate you for that.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes, awesome.